Now, coming to the next panel discussion of this session, it is how to align network slicing and private networks. I would like to invite Saurabh Mittal, Head Solution and Integration Network, R&D, Bharti Airtel; Pankaj Kitchlu, Systems Engineering Director, India and SAARC Region, Juniper Networks; Saurabh Tewari, Director and Chief Technology Officer, Telecom, Dell Technologies; and the moderator for the session will be Ibrahim Ahmad, Consulting Editor, CyberMedia. Over to you, Mr. Ahmad.
Good afternoon, friends, and a very warm welcome on behalf of Voice&Data. We are here to discuss some very, very important things which are happening in the telecom space with the advent of 5G, which is really opening up a lot of new horizons and a lot of new vistas as far as communications and applications and services possibilities are concerned. One of the key things that has been there is about aligning network slicing with private networks. Obviously, 5G is something which is now a reality. There are 5G commercially running 5G networks around the world. India is also doing a lot of work in that area. There are lots of pilots running. And 5G, one of the big things of 5G will be the boost that it will give to this entire industry 4.0 movement that we are seeing. So the implementation, execution technologies in 5G and the other networks, supplementary, complementary networks that are there, private networks, all of them are going to play a very, very big role going ahead. We know that a survey by GSMA says that by 2025, operators can expect a $300 billion revenue opportunity coming from network slicing. And at a time when, while technology is growing, ARPUs have been taking a hit. I think at a time like this, 5G is not just about better quality of service and better customer delight, but is also about new revenue opportunities and therefore a better ARPU. So considering all these things, we would like to today focus more about aligning network slicing and private networks. How is that going to happen? What's been the experience so far? And we have a very, very distinguished panel with us this morning. We have Saurabh Mittal, who heads Solution Integration Network R&D at Bharti Airtel. We also have Pankaj Kitchlu, who is the Director of Systems Engineering for India and SAARC region at Juniper Networks. And we also have with us this afternoon Saurabh Tewari, who is the Director and CTO, Chief Technology Officer for Telecom at Dell Technologies. So we will be deliberating on some of these questions around how do you really leverage and how do you really juice the new telecom network technologies which have come in. And as you all know, the discussions that we have here will be broadcast to the telecom ecosystem, which includes operators, policymakers, telecom equipment companies, handset companies, consultants, and obviously organizational and enterprise users also. So let me throw the first question to the speakers this afternoon. So what are some of the architectural and business model changes that are crucial to achieve in private networks to gain from network slicing? So anybody who wants to take this up first can start. Saurabh, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Ibrahim, and thanks to Voice&Data for organizing this very timely session. I think what I believe is that we are in for very exciting times. For sure, we had seen the first wave of revolution, which came with 2G, and then how 4G essentially with the mobile broadband made it really, India is the largest consumer of the data. And I must say that, the way we are surviving in this pandemic is something which is kind of made possible only through the kind of data connectivity which has been enabled in this country, not just in this country, but across the globe by various telecom operators and the entire ecosystem which has come together to deliver it. So I see that, I mean, this wave of connectivity, digitalization is something which will be further, I mean, continued with the 5G wave that we are going to see. So for sure, I mean, the 5G is going to herald a new way of doing things. A lot of innovation that I see that is going to come up in the industry 4.0 that everybody has been talking about. And we believe that, and I personally believe that the network slicing or the topic that we have chosen for the discussion is a pivoting point for making that happen. So I think, thanks for inviting me over. I mean, of course, some of these, I mean, the views I share are my personal views, but I think we are in for very exciting journey ahead. Now, coming back to the question, Mr. Ibrahim, you raised on the architectural point, I would say all the three domains of the way current networks are built. I mean, it really touches, I mean, if you look at core network, we'll be doing SA core, as we call it, for the 5G, right? I mean, 5G has this non-standalone architecture and standalone architecture. For doing network slicing, I mean, SA is something which essentially will be kind of very much required. If you look at the radio network, then radio network has to be agile and flexible for reconfiguring the way we require it for the different use case. And if you look at the transport, then it has to be programmable to meet the required SLA, QS, or topology for that network slicing, as we see. So to that extent, it really, I mean, is a new paradigm in all the three domains of core network, radio network, and the transport network. And I mean, personally see three large pillars, I mean, three enablers, if I may say so, in making these changes in these three pillars of the network. And to my mind, these three enablers are virtualization, cloudification, and this microservice architecture, which is required to be absolutely agile and flexible way of doing things. I think that's one big key. Then the second piece which comes into picture is this mobile edge computing, because then we need really flexible networks to say that, okay, where the control plane, data plane has to reside, different use cases, different slices are going to have different requirements. To be able to place the user plane control in the 5G with this mobile edge computing is going to be very, very important. And last but not the least, I think the third enabler to put this all together is the brutal automation, as some of my colleagues have, I mean, previously talked about. I think because the networks are becoming complex, no doubt about it. I mean, if we were to say that, okay, we will make this simple, this is only with respect to automation. So all the OSS, BSS platforms, that the way we have thought them together, I think we really need to have absolute high degree of automation to make this, I mean, enabled by and be consumed by different stakeholders per se. So, I mean, as far as I see, we are touching all the three domains and the three enablers of, I mean, cloud with microservice architecture, and then the mobile edge computing and the automation. I think these are the three big enablers, the way we architect the new networks for the network slicing and 5G. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Saurabh. I think that's a very, those are very important inputs. Those are very important inputs, and going forward, they will really influence the way operators redefine and restructure networks along with the private enterprises, and then see what happens. And obviously that will have an impact on the kind of services and quality of services that people get. Pankaj, Saurabh, Tewari, anything that you would, what's your perspective on this? Yeah.
If you allow me, thank you, Saurabh, both the Saurabhs. So, Ibrahim, thanks. I feel very confident of one thing, that and that 5G is the first generation for enterprises. I think that's the essence. I think everything revolves around what we can do with the enterprise. we had 3 generations in India. We have seen how we have moved from voice to data to video to whatever in last 3 generations. But I think the essence for me in 5G is enterprise. And I want to underline that enterprise because everybody is coming together to take the enterprise industry 4.0 principles to the next level with 5G. We're not able to do that in our past avatars. So 5G is the first generation for enterprise, to be frank. Here the telcos, the rich experience of telcos, and I said it before also, the Indian telcos have done the most, they have solved the most complex problems on the globe, and they have been always ahead of time. So that sturdiness of telcos is what I feel 5G will bring bear. Then there will be these IT organizations, the enterprise-rich experiences of people who have these deep domain experiences. They will come into the mix and will be fueled with the cloud, which Saurabh Mittal was just saying, with the cloud native architecture, with this third dimension. And then you will have to shake this, what will say, the whole concept and make that architectural shift. And when I see what happens because of these 3, is that the architectural shift happens more towards giving a deterministic, giving a very predictable, and what actually industries and enterprises need is a hands-free environment. And that is what I am hoping that 5G will do, and the ecosystem will do. That my smallest possible enterprise in an SME or a small startup, yeah, thank you, or even a large enterprise can use that for creating that monetization, or creating that go-to-market business case, or creating a new service which we could not even have imagined. I think 5G is going to collaborate and cooperate and finally bring this as a platform. I like the word platform because we didn't have platforms as such, because we used to have unique dimension services with all our previous generation. Here there is a platform for a lot of people to dance and make sure they have some kind of a script to which they can orchestrate and to which they can create a symphony. So I'm really excited, like Saurabh said, that these are exciting times because so far we had upgrades. Now we have a new network, which will have a data center in 20 kilometers, always in 200 or 400 kilometers, also in 2000 kilometers, which will be trying to insert a service for one packet data unit. Amazing. I don't know how we will achieve it. It's very tough. And someone, Deepak, was saying some days back that we are changing gears while we are in the flight. And that is the biggest challenge for telcos, to make sure the enterprises and the industry 4.0 gets this slice of network, which is basically a quality which we are not able to achieve earlier, right? Because we did not have a policy definition from radio to transport to core, right? Across. So I'll stop there, but I think, yeah, these are amazing times.
Yeah, interesting. I think I hear the same, I would say, voice coming when Saurabh talked about yes. What's really required at the OSS, BSS level, and you said that it is about first G for the enterprise kind of applications and customers, and what really is required is a hands-free system where OSS, BSS kind of things play an important role. So it is certainly now it's appearing to be something which is at the beginning of very, very interesting times.
Very interesting times.
So, Saurabh, would you like to add to whatever has been said so far? Any other perspective that you would like to bring in?
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree with what Saurabh and Pankaj said. So when you look at legacy networks, so 2G started with a strong focus predominantly on voice. 3G started with, again, voice only. In both 2G and 3G, which is GSM and UMTS, data was always an afterthought, okay? When you move to the 4G network, okay, Voice essentially became an afterthought, because initially when you used to have a 4G connection and you try to make a voice call, you would see that it would get bumped down to either GSM or to 3G. And after a period of time, you started having the concept of VoLTE with the IMS coming in, and you had SRVCC and things of that nature. Okay, but when you move towards 5G NR, what you're doing is that you are now, instead of the older concept of APNs, okay, where you would give a GN pool and a small IP pool, which on the basis of which you could sort of pseudo isolate certain networks on the basis of just IPs and certain firewalls and certain rules. Now you can have a brand new logically separated network. And I'm using the word new with a little bit of sprinkling of salt, okay? You can have a network which is logically separated. So you have, let's say, for example, for a slice for emergency services, or a slice for drones, a slice for V2X or vehicle to vehicle, or a slice for telemedicine and finance, okay? And those slices essentially will not impact, okay, other neighboring slices. And you have multiple strategies around those slices. I mean, you could have static assignment, you could have partial resource alignment, you could have a full sharing of the overall resources. Okay. Now, what all of these do is essentially ensure that when you and I are watching Netflix, okay, and I was hearing just yesterday that they're doing trials of telemedicine or dropping vaccines via drones in Hyderabad. So while you and I watch Netflix, that service can go uninterrupted. Because obviously when you're dropping medicines via drones, you will not be able to use legacy networks. You will have to use something which has very low latency. And for the first time, this is something which is going to be possible, not just separating things via an APN, which was long time ago. This is for the first time that you can actually do this. And in release 16 and release 17, release 16 has just been finalized. Release 17 is going to bring further enhancements to critical communications, mobile to massive machine type communications. So this is evolving. This is just the first leg. And to be honest, one of the greatest things that make this possible is the automation architectures on the software, okay, that are being implemented across. Secondly, the radio, which is itself being disaggregated. So now you can actually have a disaggregated radio. You can block slices off on your radio network, coordinate it with your transport and core. And finally, there are architectures here which enable you across multiple mobile operators. So say, for example, you have a manufacturing facility in Delhi, and there's another manufacturing facility that you have in, let's say, somewhere in France, okay? Multiple operators can share that same architecture, okay? And the slicing, the QoS, to basically coordinate manufacturing, which is separated by oceans apart. Okay, so that's the kind of excitement. I'm really glad that Saurabh said that he's excited, because I'm actually really excited, and that's where the amount of compute also comes in, because now you also have, because you're disaggregating everything, you're not no longer bound by what one vendor is doing. Okay, you can now share that same progress that is happening in the semiconductor industry, and you can implement it very quickly. Thank you.
Thanks, Saurabh. So it's clear that 5G is going to be something which is not just new, but it could be revolutionary, transformational. It's just the beginning. We are likely to see a lot of new things, both at the technology evolvement level as well as at the applications which are built over the technology and the quality of service that will finally come. So I think all of you, and therefore I also agree that very exciting times ahead, and we hope that 5G really fulfills those promises of not just changing the industry, but actually changing the society and changing the lives of the people in many ways. So my next question to the speakers here is about any lessons or challenges worth noting from that has been done in this area so far. So these could be examples from overseas, these could be examples from some of the pilots which are happening here. Any lessons or any challenges? What have been the challenges so far? and what are the lessons that we can learn that Indian operators as well as those guys who are looking at private networks, if those kind of what are the lessons for them?
I think the biggest,
because one of the things that was said right at the beginning when the 5G thing had started was in terms of the infrastructure and technology challenges.
Yeah,
so,
thank you. So,
yeah.
So if you remember, there were a couple of words which were used by Saurabh Tewari as well as Saurabh Mittal about programmability, right?
Yeah.
And automation, and these were the words which normally we use and abuse a lot. But let me tell you, the challenge lies in these two sweet words, right? There's a lot of capex challenge which might come out of this transformational. There is a lot of AI operations challenge which might come out of this transformation. And there is a whole product life cycle shift, because there will be services for enterprises which have a shorter life cycle, which have a longer life cycle, and there'll be mixed band things. So I think what used to happen earlier, because without programmability and without automation, was that whenever I used to administer a service, I used to treat let me take a transport example, because that's where my expertise come. We used to treat that with a basic QS, and used to give the different priority queues, and that was life was simple, because you used to have kbps of services on the left side, and you used to have 100 of gigs of network from telco. So you could manage that and used to over provision your network, and life was okay. Not anymore, right? Because you will have 100 gigs of traffic and terabits of traffic, and the network will be still bracing in between. So the challenge is now that the input traffic and the transport energy is almost same form. There's not much I can play with just with one button. So I will have to play with multiple buttons, and hence the automation and programmability means I might have to cut this topology as such. So that I carry that priority or expedite or whatever we used to call it on time. I'll have to frame it and put it onto a plane which is a colored green plane, and we'll have to make sure I transgress different sleeves in the network, because networks used to be hierarchical. They have to be flat now, because I need them to be washing away that priority till the core. And that can only happen if these transport planes are different colors. And when I say different colors, doesn't mean all have to have similar kind of a treatment. One of them will not have a latency as a priority, because that is just a bits or bytes of text, and one of them will be a 8K video, which will have a different treatment. So the constraints which you want to program, and you want to automate that policy for a tethered or for a heavy tenant aspects of a transport, or even radio and core, will need to be looked at. There may be some tweaks. I keep saying Juniper MX is programmable. We started in 2010 with a router, and today we could do 20 services on that. I think those are the flavors which people will look at, that the infrastructure where you could now go and put a code which could enhance this slice functionality. So I think, yeah, challenges, these may be only two, but once you start the journey and you are changing the wheels when you are already driving, I think that's the biggest challenge, because the services cannot go down, experience cannot go down, and you are trying to change everything. You are trying to change the tire while you are driving. So I think, yeah, my thoughts are going around these three: automation, programmability, and availability of the overall
Okay.
output.
Yeah. I think good, very, very good points. Saurabh and Saurabh, any?
Thanks, Mr. Ibrahim. I actually would like to build on what both Pankaj and Saurabh Tewari earlier said. I think Pankaj alluded to the fact that this is the first generation for enterprise in the wireless space. I mean, where this becomes a meaningful right type of connectivity. And Saurabh also gave the example of the drone delivery versus Netflix as well. So I think if you look at the first and biggest challenge is that when we do these things, these innovation, and we merge the B2B traffic and the B2C traffic in the same kind of a network, right? I mean, how do we manage, the right level of segregation and still manage the expectations? Because what Pankaj was alluding, and I absolutely agree that this automation programmability, I think is a complex challenge to solve. I think this is the complexity of this we'll realize when we start to implement, and we have expectations to manage. I mean, I'm saying that as an operator, we'll be front end, but I'm sure that Pankaj and Saurabh will have to be equally important in the value chain to ensure that we manage these expectations. And the third thing which Pankaj was alluding, that we are changing while the plane is running, or it's on the it's trying to take off, and we are saying now we have a challenge to replace the wheels, right? I'm just saying that we can't expect anything to go wrong at this point of time. These becomes very important aspects. And another piece which I would say actually is not a challenge, is an opportunity, but it would look like a challenge in the beginning. That's essentially the promise of where does the slicing benefit? It is by sharing infrastructure. By saying that instead of having dedicated purpose-built infrastructure or networks, we create a common network and infrastructure, but which can serve the different, types of requirement, different people in different manner. So there is an efficiency which is going to come. But to start that journey is a big challenge. So I think what Pankaj was just beginning in the initial part of the CapEx piece, I will not dwell much onto that, but I think I would look at this as an efficiency lever. But sometimes I think crossing that bridge becomes a challenge in some sense or the other. So to me, that's a twin-sided part. We have the challenge is how do we convert this into a potential opportunity in future. So that's something I think as an ecosystem we need to solve. So my take on that. Thank you.
Saurabh Tewari, would you like to?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the aspect that both Saurabh and Pankaj referred to is critical. Okay, everything that we do in the network, the whole tenet behind the evolution of the network, okay, where you have abstraction, containerization going forward, is for enabling scalability. Okay, and scalability cannot be brought in scenarios which need it most, like slicing, without architectures that are that depend heavily upon automation. Okay, it's just impossible, because we're looking at connecting billions of devices at the enterprise level, right? You're going to have factories which are going to be run exclusively by sensors and actuators. Sensors could be cameras, which could be infrared, normal cameras, 4K cameras. You could have laser vision, lidar, radar, so many other things. In addition to that, you would have, thermal sensors, you could have proximity sensors, G-force sensors, okay? And you would be doing, just-in-time production and so on and so forth. So when you have thousands and thousands of devices in just one enterprise alone, okay, just one factory alone, because you're connecting everything that possibly can be connected, okay? The requirement for that slice, okay, is going to change on the basis of how the production cycle is happening. Okay, for example, you could have enterprises which are running 3 shifts, okay, but within those 3 shifts, there could be certain shifts which use more machines than certain shifts that don't use those many machines and have actually got a manual process. Okay, similarly, you could have certain processes which do not rely upon humans at all, and their requirement is constant, okay, because they are producing continuously. Okay, so how do you manage the scale when the demand changes in a specific enterprise? And at the same time, how do you manage something that remains continuous and has very little variance? Okay. And then second thing is, of course, some regulatory challenges also. I'm not sure whether sort of it is still there, because I remember when I was a part of this entire ecosystem from a telco delivery perspective, we could not implement QoS in 4G either, because the government said it doesn't matter what bill you are paying. If you pay more, doesn't mean that you get more speed. And there was a discussion about net neutrality and so on and so forth. I'm just hoping that it doesn't sort of land on network slicing also, because network slicing's entire premise is essentially differentiating service quality. Then, of course, you also have interoperability, okay? And then, of course, you also have places where customers dictate certain things which are just not possible. Someone might say, okay, between my factory here in Punjab to the factory that I am, pulling in, to the factory that is supplying raw material in Chennai, okay, I need this amount of latency, okay? And without this, I cannot fulfill a certain process. So all of these things, of course, are going to be challenges, which I'm sure together we can address, to the satisfaction of the person that matters the most, which is the customer here in this entire ecosystem. Thanks.
Yeah, I think very, very important as well as interesting perspectives. And as you said, I think right at the beginning, one of you said that the operators will, I'm sure, rise to the occasion and meet these challenges. Obviously, there are some factors which are really beyond their control, and one hopes that with the new digital communications policy, which actually talks about very, very ambitious things, some of these supportive policies are equally forward-looking, and therefore some of these things can be achieved. Any other view on this, or should we move on to the next question? Pankaj?
Yeah, I was just thinking if I can add, and Saurabh, both the Saurabhs had wonderful thoughts. I was just thinking, will the policy from the government and regulator be different? I'll say it will be a decision, do we want to have these services or not? So it's like earlier we used to have same services and we were having a different treatment, and I could understand why the policy and regulator had to play a part. But I see here now the abundance of services is going to come to this platform, and if you don't treat them differently, that service will not even be born. So I think it's a different dimension. I'm sorry, but I was just thinking aloud. I'm feeling if you don't allow these 5 different constraints to occur, the same network cannot have these 10 different services, right? That's the premise I'm playing. We didn't need it because we were just selling broadband all our last 2 decades, so it was okay. But now it's like with standalone, and finally when we'll have a real 5G. Any other service we can't imagine if we don't have a policy in all the 3 segments.
Okay, so let me bring in another perspective about network slicing, and that is to do with security. Obviously, especially when you have enterprise customers and enterprise applications, so whether it is banking and finance or manufacturing or retail or a lot of these things, the security has to be far, far more better and robust than it is for mass market kind of consumers. So is this a matter of concern, security in slicing? There will be blind spots. We will really not know what's happening there, and therefore it's going to be an insecure technology, insecure infrastructure, or this is really not an issue at all?
Actually, let me quickly address that. So to be honest with you, I think networks are going to be significantly more secure with slicing, because now what you've done is, instead of applying certain rules on a packet, which is flowing from RAN to transport to core and then out of the network, okay, you are creating a brand new node, okay, a layer of nodes which encompass across all these 3 layers, okay, all these 3 domains, I'm sorry, okay. And what that enables you to do is create a significant level of isolation between critical services which are being utilized by let's say, banks, or services which are being utilized by, let's say, hospitals, which require a certain level of privacy. And then, normal consumer level services, which require just emails and which in any case are protected through VPNs and so on and so forth. But at the same point in time, interception mechanisms which are used by government agencies need to be able to, they must evolve essentially to cater to this newer slice, because obviously when you have things which are, heavily isolated and sliced, you would require mechanisms that see through those slices, or you deploy one probe per slice, and that may become a bit tricky unless that probe itself is virtualized. And when you move to release 17, you will actually start seeing areas where these the probes themselves, you'll have them per slice, you'll have them per node, per virtual node. You'll have a small service which is running on every one of them, okay, which is going to capture all of this information. So security, I think, is going to be the least of our concerns, but too much security can also be a bit of a concern. Okay, that's my small take on this.
Yeah, Pankaj, Saurabh.
Saurabh, you want to go first, or you?
No, please, Pankaj, go ahead. I would like to listen to you.
Thank you. Don't embarrass me. So what I feel is it's always a glass half full, or how you want to look at it. And thanks, Saurabh Tewari, for making those comments. They're brilliant. Exactly what I was also thinking. I want to look at the glass half empty, and I feel that 5G is also getting. If I have to step back, right, and I don't have to go to my technology hat. There's a lot of operations which will go into an untrusted zone, I hope, because if we want to go to that last mile, which we don't have, we might have to go to something where you might have a space which is internet driven, if I may call it. It's not telco driven. And there will be maybe it won't be totally an India use case, but I have seen there are licenses world over where you sublet, you have a shared telco infrastructure, you have MVNOs, you have you have layering, right? And a lot of things are in a zone which is untrusted, and then there is a trusted zone. So yeah, Saurabh mentioned the trusted zone, and I'm happy about that. But what I want to pull out is this untrusted zone, and there could be a DDoS attack, there could be any kind of an attack on these hypervisors or COTS platforms. So that has to be hardened. These VNFs, which will be now open to aggression, because now we are opening up the, I'll say we have taken the lid out. It used to be a telco till 4G, right? It used to be end-to-end pipe, but now there's no end-to-end pipe. It's any to any, right? I am able to terminate a traffic on an edge compute cloud, which is too close. I'm taking the control central. I am taking the traffic distributed. So I think the mantra is, and from Juniper we have been saying that it's not a point security anymore. It's a connected security. So security has to be with, as Saurabh was saying, with the packet, with the session, with the byte. It has to be in the router. It has to be in the switch. It cannot just be in a firewall, which used to be a perimeter kind of a gateway. So it is everywhere. So there is a threat within, and there's a threat outside. So I feel the focus so far on the security has been mostly on detecting and doing some kind of a treatment on some sandbox and taking to some download of signatures. No more. I think the real-time nature of all the services needs real-time enforcement. I have to underline that it is not easy. Because if there is detection and there is a compromise, and if there is a service which obviously doesn't mean that it's going to impact the whole network, but at least that segment, there has to be some kind of a connected nature policy where we either quarantine that, or we create some kind of an advanced threat protection layer on that data center layer and make sure it has an what should I say, on demand aspect in security also, and that particular second rather than a post facto, because it won't help. So for me, security is getting in the agenda rather than post thinking, right? It has to be a boardroom discussion. That's for sure. And as I said, the three verticals are collapsing in 5G: the telco vertical, the cloud native nature, and the enterprise. So when you have three different what should I say, differently thinking ecosystems, there has to be some larger connected security thinking for whatever we want to achieve. I think yeah, I may have looked at the glass half full, but that's I thought we should have a view.
No, absolutely. I think being a realist is much more required and useful than. Thanks. I think that was also a very, very good perspective. And let's see what Saurabh has to say. Saurabh, Airtel, would you like? You have now heard both.
No. There is a reason actually I wanted to hear, right? I mean, as an operator, what I can say is technology to us is central to what we do. And I mean, and we always look up at our technology partners as to how they can essentially bring all the best practices and enable the security, not just at perimeter, but to the central way of doing things. And I just wanted to echo what Pankaj said, and I'm also happy to hear from Saurabh Tewari. I mean, security is not seen as an afterthought. I think what we are seeing is that now the way the networks are getting built, I mean, it is part of the central design itself. Otherwise, we'll struggle. I probably will say that the pandemic has taught us that if, I mean, we have lapses, then how soon the issues can escalate. Similarly, I think I would say that if there are lapses in the networks, and that too on a shared infrastructure, then how quickly these can escalate. So I would say that from coming from an operator community, I can echo this part that security is thought as a very central to what we do. And we always look at our technology partners, how they enable us to run networks in secure manner, and then also ensure at the end customers, I mean, whether these are end consumers or the enterprise consumers, which are going to be far more demanding. I mean, there's no doubt about that part. And of course, what we see is that the threat surface area is getting increased. I mean, it's not just the secured physical security cannot be guaranteed, right? I mean, many of these devices will be in areas which will be touched, accessible to many people, and maybe the enterprise guys will come and say, okay, they will also need some access. So how do we share this responsibility is going to be a challenge. But I'm sure, I think as both Saurabh Tewari, Pankaj said, that there are ways and mechanisms, and we need to be really thinking this through while we are building this network. That's the way I would look at it, Mr. Ibrahim. So that was the reason I said I would like to first hear as technology partners how, I mean, Dell, Juniper, and all the other technology partners enabling us to run these in most secure manner. Thank you. So you echoed us a very, very important question. That's very important to us from an operator community.
So does it also mean that going forward with 3G and with private networks and network slicing, etc., there will be a need for more alignment and cooperation with the customers, especially the enterprise customers? You will need to. So far, it was a network and a technology and a pipe that you were giving to them. Now with slicing and a lot more customized services and customized bandwidth being given to them, does it mean that you will need to be involving the customers a little more in the way you are doing things?
So maybe let me take one part attempt at this piece. So if I can say so, I don't want to delve into how things will evolve, but what I can say is that operators have been very responsive to customer demands. And in the enterprise division, and one thing, for example, Airtel has created an advisory board wherein for the enterprise customers, wherein they essentially are advising Airtel on how to build the networks and what need to be done from a technology perspective as well, not just from a commercial angle. So I see that there has to be much more collaboration. Exactly how things will unfold, we'll probably see, or we'll cross the bridge as the time comes on to that part. But for sure, you're right, Mr. Ibrahim. I would say that there has to be much more joint working with the end customers, in this case, the B2B customers, because each of these industry verticals have their own unique requirement. I mean, we were discussing earlier, these are not just in terms of the technical requirements of latency or uptime or quality of service. I would say that there could be some places where it is a localized requirement. There are certain enterprises who have wide area requirements. I mean, Saurabh Tewari gave example of trans-nation requirement as well. But there could be manufacturing facility who are concerned on what goes into maybe their specific premises. So I think there is a diversity of requirement, and in order for us to meet those requirements, I think we will be working closely with the industry partners, I mean stakeholders, and see how do we best create the network which is meeting their service level agreements.
Yeah. Saurabh and Pankaj, you would like to add to anything what Saurabh has said on this question of more collaboration perhaps going forward with the customers?
Sure, absolutely. So look, when we look at slicing and the use cases that it addresses, I completely agree with what Saurabh mentioned. It is now, we are no longer a bit pipe, okay? We are providing services that enable a specific business logic or a use case, okay? And perhaps not even enable, but are critical, okay, for that use case or business logic to be realized in the first place. Initially, it was not even possible to realize it. Now it is, thanks to 5G and of course, higher bandwidth availability, lower latency, and so on and so forth. But at the same point in time, when you look at a specific process, it is governed by sensors and actuators. And there is a significant amount of information that not only needs to be gathered, which is what network slicing is going to help you with, but it also needs to be processed. And Saurabh also gave the example of the multi-access edge, computing, okay, which is the MEC, okay. When you process this information, the processing is with the intent to provide feedback and control, right? And when you provide feedback and control, someone with malified intention could, like man in the middle or DDoS or whatever it is, okay, they could actually then hijack that feedback and take control of aspects which previously were not possible, okay, because it was an air-gapped solution. It was an air-gapped environment. It was an air-gapped SCADA environment. When you look at slicing, okay, you basically reduce that threat vector's surface area significantly by making it a separate slice. No one can actually physically breach, or logically breach, I'm sorry, because there's no connectivity unless you actually hack into or compromise the absolute base layer, which gives you access to the higher layers. So let's say, for example, you have an abstraction layer, you go into that gives you access to the containers, okay? And then from there, you can, the various slices that the containers are comprised, the various containers that make up those slices, okay? And then you can actually start doing it. So it's not as if the threat is disappearing, but it is becoming more and more difficult to do that. And that was one of the main premises of slicing. So when you basically play a role in enabling a customer's use case, then I agree, you really have to have a very, very closely coordinated relationship with the end customer to implement something that is holistic and secure. And of course, with that, I'm sure we as Dell Technologies, and of course, I'm sure Pankaj as well as Juniper, with Juniper in perspective, we're all together working in making that ecosystem more and more secure, scalable, as well as very, very high performance to take care of all of these. In fact, we actually introduced security at various levels, like cryptographically encrypted, firmware updates, silicon root of trust, trusted platforms. We were the first ones to actually introduce those things. And those are now becoming the benchmark of how everyone looks at security from a compute perspective. Similarly, there are areas where Juniper is building that level of security in their products, and I'll let Pankaj elaborate upon that, where all of this is becoming intrinsic into the product itself. So as each and every product is secured, you end up securing the entire ecosystem.
In simple words, threat can get sophisticated, right? as we keep on going, there will be new dimension which we need to basically cater to. And to the question, Mr. Ibrahim, I feel if you have to get an industry-specific use case consumed, right? When I say consume, you could always have these things which nobody consumes and you don't have a business case. But you really have to get consumed. You got to get the expert from healthcare. Got to get an expert from a transport. You got to get a healthcare or some expert. He has to be a doctor to give you that how the patients have to be treated. Otherwise, you'll not be able to get the business. So it is very important that collaboration in 5G happens in multiple spheres. So telco has to enter the enterprise is what I'm thinking. And my understanding is telcos have done so much in technology and so much in monetization. With 5G, it might get exponential now. So the technology will get exponential, the monetization will get exponential. So I'm just thinking if there has to be, what is also 5G doing is that, like Saurabh just said, that there's a SCADA system, there's a IP/OT sleeve in between, there's a push to talk, there's a robotic arm. There are 10 different systems which are in the enterprise today, 10 different technologies. What 5G can do, just remove all those 10 and have one technology. So it's going to be a huge change, right? Walkie-talkie system, the production line, the factory floor sensors, as Saurabh was saying, enormous, millions and billions of these, information generating, traffic generating points, right? And rather than again keeping the promise of continuity, I think this is now a promise of disruption. This is a promise of disaggregation. 5G is a promise of change. And if I have to do multiple technology transfers, 5G can do it. Do we now have the tenacity and time to do it? I think time will tell. But I am very confident that the opportunity is on both dimensions, the technology dimension as well as the use case dimension. So we have to work. And while we are going into this trench, working with the enterprise as OEM suppliers and bring those use cases, it doesn't have to be only towards monetization and business. It also has to happen through public safety. It also has to happen towards how do we have this 5G in a box kind of a solution, which can go to a very serious situation, which is a national calamity or some kind of a fire or an earthquake. So I think multiple dimensions getting touched. So yeah, very interesting times, I can say, and very, I'll say, consuming times.
Thank you so much. My last question to the speakers this afternoon is about another aspect that we once in a while hear about in relation to slicing is in terms of too much of slicing leading to sprawl and leading to underutilization of the network, etc. So is that something, is it the right time to talk about it, discuss it, or is it something that we can look at when we reach the bridge? Is it a serious matter?
Anyway, I think let me again have a jab at it, and I probably would look at Pankaj and Saurabh Tewari both to essentially solve, or respond that how do we actually mitigate the situation.
Yeah.
To me, personally speaking, I mean, the premise of slicing is to actually increase the utilization and overcome these kind of issues, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because as I mentioned previously, the entire purpose of slicing is to say that rather than building a purpose-built network with very much less utilization for some of these, I mean, specific use cases, why can't we build a bigger pipe, bigger network, which is a shared common infrastructure, and then run all these different kind of use cases and for different types of industries and create much more efficiency out of it. So, as far as I see, the slicing should result into better utilization of the networks, improve the efficiency of the network. But of course, these are all matters related to the SLAs and how, what kind of a policy flexibility is allowed in achieving all these network configuration or network slicing, so as to say, because we at the end of the day also have to meet those SLAs as well. So from our perspective, I would say that we like the network efficiency to actually improve with the network slicing. But then I look at Pankaj and Saurabh to respond. I mean, is it really, do they really think this is happening or not? Because one of the issues which we see, Mr. Ibrahim, is that some of the standardization work is still not fully complete, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the release 17 work is what will essentially deliver the full potential of network slicing. And since this is in the standardization, some work is still continuing, and I think, at least till next year, we don't expect the full standardization to happen. So that's one hitch which I see. But I think even in the beginning, we should start to see more effective utilization with this shared infrastructure being created.
Yeah, and if I may go next, thank you, Saurabh. I think, yes, the premise of network slice is to have higher utilization. But I think if I come from what Juniper is thinking and how we have been handling network slice, there were multiple ways which everybody put a hat to it. There was a hardware way and there was a software way of handling it. Let me leave the hardware way for some time, because I think, yeah, that thinking had happened much before the containerization of the world happening so fast in the last 3 years. So let's go to the software way. And that used to be called node slice and flex algo and whatever. So let's go to the real one, which is getting implemented. And I feel soft slices. And I feel that the controllers and what we call as a Paragon platform within Juniper has multiple these steps, which is actually going to help us solve this problem, which is optimizing the network at will, right? So if this controller, which will be obviously talking to a services controller at the higher layer, but let's not go there. I'm just thinking, just to that question, the controller is looking at each and every element function, each and every interface, each and every service, each and every customer, and finally that particular session, or even below that, whichever. So what I'm thinking is, once you have a controller based network transport, and I'm specifically talking about transport because there are radio controllers also where we have advanced understanding, and we are talking of integration with a lot of radio controllers also, where the feed will come into our controller and do a treatment such that with the time and with the sinusoidal use of a particular use case, we should be able to remotely able to customize and recustomize and change and do the right. And I always use that equal treatment, right, rather than something which is not on demand and which is not real time. So we will be doing right decisions with those controllers. lot to be done there, but I'll say basic slicing carve out from a radio to transport is currently visible to me, and we have been advancedly propagating that with a lot of production networks also, and I feel even if finally the optimization of the network will have some what should I say, corner cases, there can always be a programmable, customized, specific solution to that. That's what my thinking, because what we will be knowing today will not answer what will happen 2 years hence. So hence the flexibility and agility of these controllers, like the Paragon platform, and obviously Dell will also have their own solutions, will obviously be evolving, and will have a CI/CD pipeline which will solve that particular corner case. So I think this will be how we will take these
it will
next
be
steps.
addressed. Yeah. Yeah, Saurabh, you would like to?
Yeah. So look, this is a really great discussion on how you prevent or better utilize resources. So that's the whole premise of slicing, right? That as Saurabh said, you don't create a physical network, okay, a new physical network for every single use case. You actually create one network and logically create slices within it which address every single use case, okay, with the intent of being able to address every single use case. And that is where slicing is going to improve actually the whole structure, okay, because now since you have not created a new network for every new use case, you have created a logical slice. And a logical slice at the end of the day is logical, right? You can always modify the algorithms, okay, and the parameters of of each and every slice. Now, let's say, for example, you have static assignment. Now, there are three main algorithms which are being used. They will be finalized in release 17, okay? So one is static assignment. So let's say, for example, I have a finger, okay? I have three slices, 1, 2, 3. They're all equal, okay? Now, they could have different bandwidth, they could have different QoS, but from a compute or from a processing perspective, all three digits in this finger, okay, all three demarcations in this finger, they're going to be equal. Then you have another one, which is called partial resource, reservation, where instead of one finger, I'm not going to take this example, I'm going to take three, okay? So this is the biggest one, this is the smaller one, and this is the smallest, okay? So you could actually create, slices which basically depend upon you customize the slices and the resources that they consume on the basis of the requirement, okay? And then you kind of try and see if you in real time you can change them. And then finally you have full resource sharing, okay, wherein you have this resource, okay, and you assign it to every possible slice and they consume it as and when the need is. Now, on all three mechanisms, you require feedback from the physical resources, because look, slicing is endlessly customizable. Okay, there are a bunch of permutations and combinations around it. But the physical resource upon which these slices are running, which is the servers, the storage, the networking, so on and so forth, okay, those are not infinite, those are finite, okay? So you need a very strong feedback mechanism from these physical resources, which the upper layers can consume and take a decision based upon utilization to prevent sprawling and so on and so forth, these exact same issues. And over there we have something called telemetry streaming from Dell, which gives you real-time feedback in terms of how an accelerator is being consumed, how memory is being consumed, how storage is being consumed, how a NIC is being consumed, and more importantly, how each core in a CPU is being consumed, so that the upper layers are free to take a decision in terms of how to further customize on the fly, if possible, okay, these 3 or 4 methods that are going to be available at a later point in time.
Yeah, I think amazing the kind of things that will go in the background for the actual utilization of what 5G is all about, for the promise that it offers in terms of transforming. So very clearly, many of these aspects are new to me also, and very clearly there is going to be a lot of background tinkering and background customization that will happen. Well, we have run out of time, and this discussion can go on and on because there are so many other aspects of 5G and what all it is needed to be done to make it more customizable, more user friendly, more intelligent, and those kind of things. So, but obviously that will be for another day. So thank you once again for taking time out from your very, very busy schedules and discussing some of these very important aspects of network slicing, and look forward to have you with us again. Thank you so much. And it was a great discussion. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, speakers, for such a wonderful discussion. We would definitely love to hear from you all over again in the near future.